the purpose of the script is not to create an identical conversation every time. It's so that we know point A and point B of the conversation and the quickest route between the two, because what's going to happen is people will always take you off of that route, right? And by knowing a script and having a script and practicing that script allows you to bring it back to that necessary path as often as we can.
We've got people in here now, and we don't let the casual demeanor of Tyler Fenn put you to the side here. He's actually a big shot, vice president of sales over at REDX. You owe me for that, by the way. And you
got it.
Yeah,
checks in the mail.
Yeah. So something that's really cool about just the conversation before we started that I think everybody that's watching and especially the recording later, Tyler was mentioning to me that he's put together a lot of content around, what do you do when there's not enough homes for sale, low inventory market, and how do you crush it? And he's collected it, and he's been kind enough to share some of those tidbits. So, man, I just want to kind of get out of your way and learn some of this stuff, because I'm all about crushing it in a low inventory market.
Amen. So, Barry, thank you. I appreciate the big shot call out. Yeah, I mean, these are markets that we've never really experienced before, right? I mean, if you've been in the industry 20 years, let's say, in 20 years, you've not experienced this. Maybe if you go back further, maybe there's a time where markets were like this. You go back much further than that, and you're into my childhood, right? So I don't know what markets were like back then. But it's interesting. And part of the challenge when you encounter anything new is you're bushwhacking, right? You just have no idea what it is. You don't know what you don't know, right? And that's the big challenge. And so, so some of these things that we're going to talk about and that I put together here for our webinar today is some of the basics, right? And how we get back to the basics, because what I found is in any industry, and this is the same with my team and my department that I run here at REDX, it's the same for real estate agents, is there's always these key fundamentals that we should always follow. And following those fundamentals increases the likelihood that we're going to close transactions, that we're going to close deals, and that we're going to make money, right? That we're going to do what we set out to accomplish. And sometimes transactions happen without us fulfilling every step of the process. Are you with me so far? Right? So sometimes something falls into our lap, right? You have that golden transaction where there's no problems, and somebody's pre-approval letter matches up with what their finances actually look like, and everything works out, right? And when we have those type of transactions that we feel like we don't have to work for, next time what that does for us is it means that we tend to cut corners a little bit, right? We tend to go, I don't have to take this step, right? We were talking about scripts a little bit earlier. I don't have to practice my scripts this week because last week I didn't practice and it paid off, right? And what happens is when you do that too much, it becomes this really terrible slippery slope until the fundamentals of how we do business successfully and consistently become something foreign to us, right? And so that's a lot of this content is we want to get back to some of the basics, and then there's some stuff that is a little more tactical. And if we have time to get into all of that, how much time do we have, by the way, Barry?
Got another 30-ish minutes. We want to save the last 5 minutes for questions and all that stuff.
Okay, sweet. So here's the first one that I want to talk about. So a few years ago, we did a study here at REDX. We surveyed real estate agents, and what we were trying to identify was what's the difference between somebody who we'd consider a top producer, and we labeled those people that were their net commission income was over $250,000. Okay. So in this survey, those were the people that we called top producers. And then we said, how do they compare to somebody who's full-time in the business, but what we would consider average, right? So the average realtor, I think in 2020 earned like $48,000 or something, but that takes into account part-time and stuff like that. So full-time realtors that were in the business, we said that we looked and based on the results of this, they were making less than $70,000 net commission income. Okay. So we tried to identify what the difference between the two was. And one of the big things, and this first thing that we're going to talk about comes down to their plan for business, right? Is when we looked at those that were making less than $70,000 in their business, 66% of them had a written business plan and 82% of them had written goals. Okay,
Wait, say that again. Say that again.
82% of people making less than $70,000 in real estate had written goals for their year, and 66% of them had a written business plan, right? In other words, they've got those goals written down and they know that I want to make X amount of money, or I want to sell X amount of homes or participate in X amount of transactions, whatever the goal was, right? And then 66% of those people had that written down in how I'm going to accomplish that, right? So when you look at what your business plan is, that's the step-by-step, that's your playbook, right? How am I going to accomplish what I'm setting out to accomplish, okay? When it came to those top producers, those agents that were making $250,000 in their business or more net commission income every year, 100% of them had written goals and 100% of them had a written business plan that was step-by-step. How do I do it? Right. And when you look at that, that's a pretty powerful difference between somebody who's considered what we consider a top producer and somebody who is average in the business, right? Average full-time in the business. And so that was one of those things that we have focused on over the years is, look, if you don't have some sort of business plan that's in place that allows for that allows you to know exactly what you have to do every single day in order to reach your goal, then you're missing out on something really, really huge. And that was one of those things that when we looked at these top producers and looked into their business plan, that was one of the things that they did really, really well was lay out, here's what I'm going to do, right? And so this is one of those things that when I start to talk, so I'll disclaimer a little bit. This is one of those things that when I start to talk about, some people are like, oh, I've got that, right? Like, oh yeah, I've got my goals. I've got them written down. Right. But there's not a whole lot of thought that goes into that. And so let me explain the power of this for just a second here. Here at REDX, the way that we run our business is we have a few fundamental foundational bits of information that everything we do is based upon. So we have our purpose as an organization, which is the long-term reason that we exist, right? So if somebody comes and says, why does REDX exist? Well, we exist to help businesses build and implement solutions that will increase stability and growth by increasing client acquisition, right? That's why we exist. So everything that we do as a company should fit within that realm, and anything else is something that we just don't participate in. And then we look at these smaller chunks of time, usually 3 to 5 years. What are some big things that we want to go out and accomplish? And then within that, we've got these annual priorities, and we break that down on a quarterly basis. So Barry, every single quarter, the leadership team at REDX sits down in a 3 to 4 day meeting where we plan for the upcoming month. Okay. And there's a few exercises that we go through in order to make sure that we do that really, really well, to make sure that those days are used correctly. Before we even go off site though, before we even begin that meeting, every single team within REDX, so whether that's our product development, our coders, our engineers, our data scientists, our sales guys, our marketing guys, our customer success, whatever department you belong to, you participate in a meeting where you look back over the previous quarter and you identify some things that we did well and things we want to improve on. And you identify upcoming for the quarter, what's different, right? What are the things that we didn't anticipate? What are the threats to our business, SWOT analysis, that type of thing. And then all of that goes to the executives and we participate in that same exercise. And then we review everything from the company. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, where are we at in our business right now? Okay. So bear with me, because I'm going to bring this full circle in just a second. If you set a goal for the year as a real estate agent to say, I want to accomplish X number of transactions, right? I want to close 70 deals for the year. That's the end goal. That's where we want to end up. And one of the things that we often forget is to gather some context on where I'm at right now, right? Because if you want to go somewhere, those are the two things you have to know. Where are we at right now? Where do we want to go? And that's what some people fail to do, is they fail to gather some context on where I'm at right now. And then they fail to do that throughout whatever the predetermined amount of time is prior to the deadline, right? So if we're looking at our calendar year at transactions quarterly, people should be sitting down and reviewing their goal to say, number one, is this still the right goal? What's changed? Let's look at COVID last year, right? End of Q1, everything changed for everyone. Right? And anybody who didn't sit down and go, how does this affect my business? What am I going to do differently? How do I need to make changes? How do I need to communicate with people differently? Should I start using Zoom or not? Right? I mean, those types of questions, people that didn't do that were the people in Q2, Q3, and Q4 that floundered, even though we're having the most amazing real estate market that we've ever experienced in terms of low days on market, low interest rates, multiple offers, right? I mean, you see where I'm going with this, right? So
absolutely.
And so what we do as a company is we sit down and we spend 2 to 3 of those 3 to 4 days just gathering context on where we're at, because we want to make sure that the goals that we set out with are still the right goals, right? So these 250K agents, these top producers, they're going to sit down with this business plan, hopefully every quarter, or even more regularly, and ask themselves some questions to go, are these steps that I'm setting out that I lined out at the beginning of the year, are they still the right steps to accomplish my goal? If not, what needs to change? If I'm ahead of where I thought I'd be, do I need to adjust my goal? I mean, if I set out for 100 transactions, I'm on track for 120. Do I just not work as hard the rest of the year to make sure I land on 100? Or do I adjust my goal? Or if my goals were unrealistic or something changed, there was a worldwide pandemic, how do I need to adjust things? And I honestly think we could probably spend multiple webinars talking about these principles, right? I mean, talking about how to plan out your business and then break that down into your daily needed production to make sure that, I need to talk to 13 people, new people every day, every single day, in order to make sure that I'm building my network and my sphere large enough to make sure that I have enough business coming from that. Then I've got my expireds, and I've got my hot leads, and I've got my internet leads, right? We could spend a whole series of webinars just focusing on that. But the truth is, this is one of the fundamentals that a tremendous amount of people are missing right now. And it's because business is really good.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see that when business is really good, it becomes easy to cut corners and go, I don't need to review that. I don't need to look at my goals again. I don't need to review what it is that I'm doing. I don't need to look back and see. It makes us very complacent in a hot market like this.
Well, I think one of the things for me personally, and I can't, it'll be interesting to see if anybody listening feels the same way. I've never been motivated by, some people, they put that goal up there and that's what drives them. And for years, I haven't been focused on goals because I would say, oh, you know what? I wake up every day and try so hard that I can't control it. So I'm just going to give it all I have. And what I didn't understand was really what I was doing is just reacting all day. Maybe my phone rang. Maybe I got a new lead. But I wasn't actually shaping the way I wanted my life to be. I wasn't shaping my income, my business structure, where I wanted to go. This is still an emerging skill for me. This is not something that I've mastered. And I think, if we're all being honest, Tyler, if you would have started this webinar and the title of it was Goal Setting 101, I bet you most of the people listening right now wouldn't have joined it because it's not something that they think or that they value enough, myself included. But I know in my life, and it'd be interesting to see if you guys have found this, when I am able to say, this is what I want to go after, what I'm able to do is put feet to that goal. And this is how I'm going to accomplish, because success is not an event. It's a lifestyle. It's about the little things that nobody pays attention to. And that's what gets us to that big place. So actually, man, I'm really excited about this because I think that there's a lot of people listening right now that really, really need to hear more about goal setting and applying it to their everyday business.
Well, yeah. And one of the challenges of goal setting, right, is I mean, there's so much content out there about setting goals, right? And not just in the real estate industry. If you search goal setting, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of stuff out there. But one of the challenges is for me, and I think I'm a lot like you, Barry, and that this is an emerging skill for me, is to be able to say, there's something out there that I want to accomplish. And then to be able to figure out and go, well, what do I need to do now in order to do that? Right? Like, what do I have to be doing today in order to make sure that I do that? Because you know, I've got four sons. My four sons have vision boards, right? Which is awesome, right? I love that they do that. We do that as a family. And I love that that's a thing, but sometimes you go, well, you know, I put this, you know, my 8-year-olds have sports cars or, you know, they have something on there that it's like, well, that's awesome. And I'm glad that that's something that they aspire to. Or, you know, one thing, my 12-year-old just bought a pogo stick, but it's like a hardcore pogo stick, right? That guys do like backflips and stuff. I mean, something that's way more intense than I am. But you know, that's something that he aspired to. But the point is without knowing, well, what do I have to do today? All they are dreams, right? That's all it is. It's just someday I hope to accomplish that. And that's one of the things that we fail to do as real estate professionals when we go, I want to accomplish X transactions. Well, how many of those are going to come from your sphere? How many of those are going to come from repeat transactions from investors? How many of those are going to come from prospecting to expireds and FSBOs? How many of the, right? We don't break all of that down to go, well, if I want to close 12 deals or 20 transactions, let's use that number. If I want to close 20 transactions this year, well, last year I only did 12. So what am I going to do differently this year to increase by 8 transactions? And you know, my sphere has actually changed because maybe I changed locations, maybe I moved. So my sphere is different, my network, my reach is different. So how is that going to affect the 12 that I could have gotten this year? Right. And so we don't break that down and then go, well, if I have to prospect to gain 14 transactions, then how many people do I have to talk to on a monthly basis and a weekly basis, which means today I have to have X amount of contacts. Without doing that breakdown, your goal is just a dream. It's just something that's out there. And while I subscribe to the theories of positive mindset and visualization, those only take you so far without rubber meeting the road, right? And that's one area that we fail. I mentioned earlier on here about going down rabbit holes. I don't want to do that too much here, right? But we could, right? We could go down this and we could get really, really granular, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to do sometime. But sure, again, people are here because they go, I want to leverage leads. I want to do well in a market like this. So let me talk about that for just a little bit here. But I don't want people to discredit this idea of having a plan, having it in place, reviewing it regularly to make sure that it's the correct plan, has the correct steps in place to make sure that we can accomplish what it is that we set out to accomplish at the beginning of the year or on whatever timeline that we set our goals. So there's obviously, being the sales guy, the VP of sales here at REDX, I would love to go in and pitch all of our products and talk about how those will affect people's business. But I'm not going to do that, because the truth is there's some things I want to talk about that may not be totally related. But one of the things right now that people are having a lot of trouble with is finding properties for their buyers, right? That's one of the huge challenges that we have right now. And so when you look at low inventory, when you're a listing agent, having inventory is a really good thing. When there's low inventory and you're working with buyers, that becomes a much greater challenge. And I'm very active in the LCA group on Facebook. I know how challenging it is for people right now, right? People are having a really hard time getting offers accepted and finding homes for their buyers. And then one of the big challenges that creates is that people go, well, I want to sell my home, but I don't know where I'd go, right? And so then we create this backlog of inventory that at some point will hit the market when it should be on the market right now. One of the products that we provide that is typically used as a seller's tool is our GeoLeads product. And right now, this is one of the things that people are using heavily for their buyers, because what they can do is they can sit down with their buyers and go, what areas do you want to live in? What home types do you want to live in? And get that list of what are the things that you have to have in this new home. And then they can identify areas geographically in their market that go, well, the homes in this area fit this, right? Or the age of the home fits that, or the size of the home fits that. And then use that GeoLeads tool to prospect to those people on behalf of your buyer. Now, that's a really common principle, right? It's really common that when we prospect to expireds and FSBOs, we go, well, I'm calling on behalf of a buyer. And oftentimes people may or may not have an actual buyer for that specific home, but that's a pretty common method of prospecting, right? But in this situation, that's exactly what it is you're doing. People should be prospecting and going out there proactively to find the homes that fit their buyer's needs. And using our GeoLeads tool is an easy way to do that, because within Vortex, people can go and filter specifically for exactly what it is that they're looking for. It could be information about the home. It could be school district. It could be,
for those that don't know, when he says GeoLeads, he's literally saying you pick a geography and get a list of people and their contact info that fit a certain criteria that you put in. And I do this. I use the GeoLeads. I just imported a bunch, and I've got another tool that scans my database for a list of buyers. And so when I tell people I've got a list of buyers, I really do.
Yes.
And I use GeoLeads to connect the messaging.
Yes, and that's the important thing, right? Oftentimes we think, oh, well, all I can do for my buyers is go look on the MLS and see what's available. And sometimes it's that easy, right? Sometimes when there's enough inventory, it's as easy as identifying. But right now, that's not the case in a lot of markets. And so there is this need that we have to be more proactive with our buyers. Do you want me checking the chat, Barry? I know that there's been some chats in here. Okay. No, it looks like that's between me, you, and Jake. So I apologize.
And you're letting everybody know we're talking to each other. Stop it.
well, clearly I'm not. So if you're saying something to me, I'm not reading it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's some additional work necessary to get out there to close those deals. And right now, where there's low inventory, that's an important thing to do, is to get out there and proactively prospect on behalf of your buyers. But without a tool like GeoLeads, can you imagine doing something like that in your business? I mean, other than going out and knocking doors.
No, it's way more work than I want to do.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's the efficiency and even the possibility becomes really, really, really challenging. But with something like GeoLeads, it makes it really, really easy to go and pick an area and have all the homeowners' contact information generated so that you can prospect and go, look, I have a buyer who wants to live in your neighborhood, right? They want to live in your home or in a home right around yours. Are you interested in buying or selling? And that does a couple of things. Number one, it'll allow you to find those properties that people are about to put on the market or have been thinking about putting on the market, which right now is a tremendous amount of people, and allows you to double end transactions as well, because then you can list and provide the buyer side for the transaction, which everybody loves to do, right? I mean, we love taking home a full 6%, right? That's a fantastic thing. So I mean, there's so much that we want to do, and I apologize. I've got pages and pages of notes here. There's a lot of things that we can get into. What do you think is going to be most beneficial, Barry, for the people that are here on the webinar?
Well, I mean, I think you've talked about how you got to do the work, goal setting. You've talked about a mechanism to find a group of people that we should try to reach. So in my case, I think I pulled, I don't know, maybe 1,000 GeoLeads of people that had owned their home over 6 years in a specific area. So maybe now what we could do is we could say, okay, yes, you can capture all that info, but now what? I think a lot of people buy these systems and they get the data and they don't know how to action on the data, like implementation. So execution on the idea of you're going to do the work and here's the wood that you can chop. Now, how do you chop? How do you attack it in your business?
Perfect. So typically when somebody's prospecting like this, right, and we talked just very briefly about GeoLeads, GeoLeads are fantastic, right? Because I love expireds for sale by owners. They're fantastic. But but low hanging fruit tends to have a lot of competition, right? We've all experienced calling an expired listing and they go, you're the 10th guy to call me, right? The nice thing about geo leads is those are very rarely, if ever, the conversation, right? Is because now you're looking at such a large amount of homes that can be prospected to, that you're not, it's not one person being bombarded by real estate agents over and over and over. But once you're on the phone and you're doing that prospecting, there's a number of different methods in order to do just that. One that I touched on very briefly is for the buyers, right? Is you're calling on behalf of a specific buyer, and those conversations are very easy, right? It's going to be, hey Barry, my name's Tyler, I'm from REDX Real Estate. I'm calling because I have a buyer who's interested in living in your neighborhood, right? Do you know what the values on your home are currently, or have you been looking to buy or sell in the next 30 days? Or do you know anybody looking to buy or sell in your neighborhood in the next 30 days? Very simple, very non-confrontational conversation. Geo leads actually tend to be one of the lead types that people go to first when cold call prospecting or outbound prospecting becomes something that they implement, because it's an easy conversation to have, right? It's not like an aggressive for sale by owner who's been called a bunch of times or an expired listing. And so it's a very simple conversation when you're calling on behalf of one of your buyers. But there's a few other methods that I'll typically have people use when they're using geo leads as a prospecting tool. So let's talk about how to swing the axe for a little bit here. One of them that I call is called keeping the seller promise. And what this method is it's similar to your just listed, except typically it's a little bit more broad, right? And I'll explain that, right? A just listed campaign is you or somebody in your office just put a home on the market. So you're going to prospect to the closest 25 or 50 or 100 homes to that. Let them know that their home is for sale and ask if they're looking to sell in the next 30 days or someone they know is looking to sell in the next 30 days. But keeping the seller promise is a little more aggressive than that. Keeping the seller promise tends to have to do with open houses as well. It's a fantastic way to fill your open houses. And open houses are one of those things that I think are a double-edged sword, Barry. I think that people either love them or they hate them. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, very much so.
Right. I mean, open houses are fantastic when they have traffic, but when you go put balloons out at the end of the street and then expect that to draw a bunch of people, it's going to be a really long weekend, right? But typically what we do is in a situation like this around one of your listings, or if you don't have a listing yourself, this can be somebody on your team, somebody in your office, and you're going to prospect around that. But typically what you're doing is you're calling up to 500 homes around that property, letting them know that, hey, look, I've got an open house for a property that's listed in your neighborhood. And what ends up happening is people always want to know. I just had this experience a few months ago. A house just 2 doors down from me went up. They had an open house. And my wife and I, of course, walk over there. We walk through the house. We want to see what the house is like, how ours compares. We want to know what the home is going for. And the other neighbors in the neighborhood are going to do the same thing. And so you're going to draw a tremendous amount of traffic. And add every single one of these people to your database, right? I mean, you're going to collect an email, hopefully names and phone numbers from everybody who's doing that. But by calling and personally inviting somebody to an open house, pretty soon that word gets out there. And if you're calling 500 people to say, hey, look, I'm having an open house this Tuesday, I'd like to personally invite you to attend. People are going to show up to that open house. It's going to fill that open house.
So calling 500 people sounds like it would take a week. Do you want to talk about why and how, if you do have a list of 500 people in the REDX system?
Yeah, absolutely. Calling is hard for a lot of people, is it not?
Yeah.
So when I started here at REDX 13 years ago as a sales guy on the phones, and every time I'd call somebody, I'd pick up the headset and I'd punch in the number and I'd wait for them to call, and we'd go through the motion, and I'd do that a few hundred times every single day. The fastest prospectors, Barry, that I know when they're dialing by hand are typically making between 15 and 25 calls in an hour, right? So when I say call 500, that's a pretty daunting task, right? There's other things that I've seen people do that, right? You go hire a kid in your neighborhood to go canvass the neighborhood with flyers on the doors or whatever, right? There's other things that you can do. You can grab those people and upload them to Facebook and make a targeted audience, which isn't a bad concept, but there's something powerful to be said about getting in touch with that many people and calling. REDX has a dialer that's built into our system, right? We have a power dialer that allows you to call either 1, 2, or 3 people at a time. And using the dialer is an incredibly powerful, incredibly efficient way to prospect. And using the dialer is one of the things, Barry, that for me is kind of a no-brainer, and I'll explain why. There's almost no learning curve to using a dialer. Right now, if I tell you to go prospect to expireds, there's a learning curve right there, right? You've got to learn the scripts, you've got to learn the conversations, the objections, and that's a little more daunting task. But if I say go prospect and use a dialer, there's almost no learning curve. Typically, if I sit down with somebody and show them the dialer that we have within the REDX system, I can have them up and running and prospecting within a matter of minutes, usually 6 to 8 minutes, and I can have them actually dialing out to people and making connections. And so almost no learning curve. And using the dialer on even the slowest settings that we have, the dialer is going to increase their amount of calls that they can make to 40 to 80 per hour, right? So just by paying the fee for a dialer and implementing that alongside GeoLeads, now all of a sudden they're going from 15 to 25 calls an hour to, we'll average 60, we'll say 60 calls in an hour. That right there is already a tremendous increase. And then if you use something like the multi-line dialer that we have, where you're calling 3 people at a time, now all of a sudden you're 150 plus per hour, which means in an afternoon, you can call and leave voicemails for those 500 people, personally inviting them to an open house, which means Saturday's open house is going to have a tremendous amount of traffic.
Yeah, the dialer is something that we need to, as agents, learn how to master, because we're just wasting so much time. Well,
and that goes for really all of technology, Barry. Like the truth is, there are parts of our business that require the human element. Like it's really, really hard to replace a listing presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know how you automate that. And if somebody out there has figured it out, they have something powerful, right? But there's parts of our business that require us to be involved. And any type of technology that we use, whether it's our CRM, our car, right? I mean, you look at the way we use our cell phone or anything out there that we use technology for, it should automate tasks and projects and processes for us that free up our time to be involved in the aspects of our business that utilize the human element, right?
Yeah, you're speaking my love language.
Good. I'm glad. So it looks like there's a question in here that came in from Facebook, and they say
before we do the question,
okay,
I want to hijack this for a second, because
awesome.
You talking about the GeoLeads, me referencing the fact that I just imported some. I was like, I wonder, just see what happened. So here's one that I imported. You can see it's a specific neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in to look, and you can see, where is it? Right here. So 3 days later, this guy responds to a Facebook ad, registers on my website, and starts searching for homes. So just to reiterate, I got this from REDX. I have his home address, email, and phone number. So now I'm going to mail him something. This is like a silly card that just has a giraffe with a hi on it and says, hey, I've got buyers for your home. Can we chat? And then I'm going to tag my team, say, hey, reach out to this guy, because this is a person that owns a home in the area I'm looking, and now we're going to call him. And so, I'm a tech guy, digital marketing guy. This is like my shtick, but this, that's a real life example this week where now we've got somebody that's shopping for a home in the area that they own a home. That's a huge win. Huge win.
Well, it is a huge win. And what perfect timing to show that right after we were just having the conversation about using technology to automate, right? Like,
right.
How cool to get a glimpse inside what it is that you're doing, to say, look, now I'm going to tag my team. They're going to get on the phone. They're going to reach out to this guy. I love the giraffe. I mean, how much junk mail do we get nowadays that we just cast aside? I would look at a giraffe.
Oh yeah. So, it's a handwritten card, and
that's great.
It's basically, this allows me to not only say who are the people that I think are good candidates, but then you can use dialing, mailers, digital marketing, email marketing to start to surface the people that deserve your time to obsess about. That's really what that's what this is all about. And so this technology that you're sharing, it's key to it. So it's a huge win for our users.
I agree. Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you want to jump to some of the questions that we have?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh,
Let's see. So this is a bit of a unique question. It says, in your experiences, is it worth calling around a neighborhood using an out-of-country virtual assistant? Most specifically, in the Philippines, many virtual assistants and ISAs have a unique voice, unique. And although many have good English, they don't always sound like they're local. And that's from Eric.
So that's a really good question and a really common one, right? I mean, out of country ISAs right now, especially the Philippines, is really, really common for a lot of reasons, whether that's to do your prospecting for you, to just act as a virtual assistant on the technology side. I mean, there are a tremendous number of resources out of country or virtual in country that we can use. There are certain aspects of my business that I like to remain control in. So the short answer, Eric, is it's up to you. Right. It's going to come down to personal preference. And again, let's think of a virtual assistant as technology, right? Let's think of it that way, is if we're going to utilize a virtual assistant, utilizing that virtual assistant should free up our time to focus on the elements of our business that require the human element. So by doing that, what is it that you're doing with your time that where you have to be involved? Right? Because I know there's a lot of people that hire an ISA because they just don't like to pick up the phone. And then while their ISA is prospecting, they'll go play a round of golf, right? Which that's up to them. But again, if we're going to utilize technology, it should be there to automate process for us that allow us to focus on money-making activities where we have to be involved. And so my thought in that particular situation is it's really up to you. If you want to do that, what's the ROI on doing that and then allowing you to spend more time elsewhere? That would be my question. I don't have anything against utilizing somebody in the Philippines. I think I've been involved in organizations and projects where that's a really common thing, or any, not just the Philippines, right? Anywhere, because there's resources that they have at a cost that is typically better and easier to acquire than sometimes doing it here in the States. So I don't have a problem against that. I think that what you're asking comes down to personal preference more than anything. And the truth is, the United States is a melting pot. We have people from every background with every the full spectrum of whatever you can think of. We have people here in the States. I think that somebody's accent nowadays is far less concerning for people on the other end of the phone than maybe it was 20 years ago. My personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I've scaled off of virtual assistants, and there's several that have been on my team for 4 years now. And I'll tell you, when you're hiring out, to dovetail what Tyler just said, if you look at the person calling or working alongside of you as surfacing opportunity that you have to capitalize on, then it makes sense. But you're still going to have to capitalize on it, which means you're still going to end up having to pick up the phone. It's never going to go away, but it is going to be an efficiency play so that you can leverage yourself out into more than one place. So, it just depends on what you do with the person doing it. Don't pay for someone to do it with the anticipation that someone's just going to fall into your lap. It doesn't work that way. And you'll be very disappointed if you have that expectation.
Yes. Thank you. I agree with that. I think it comes down to, what does it allow you to do with your time to allow you to be more productive?
So this is actually really meaty content. I think more than what I think a lot of webinars with vendors typically are. And I think that, I don't know, I'm over speaking, but I think that you should come back and finish and keep diving into this, because I do think that this is going to be a hit on the YouTube channel, because it's the reason a lot of people aren't successful. And so I think it's really important that we highlight it and go deep on it, really, really go deep.
I'm in.
So. Sounds good. So I know that Jake gave me the 45-minute marker to end. Does anybody have any additional questions for Tyler and myself? Just to kind of summarize, set goals mainly to execute on your, where you want to go in your business, leverage technology, right? And so we talked about geo leads, and honestly, we probably list one a month from cold lists of homeowners because and then we just cast a super wide net, and then those that kind of nibble and respond, we dive deep on. So, it's the future, I think, big data. So, any other questions? Oh, we do have one. There's a big push to use live or recorded video with Instagram and Facebook. This is from Tevis. Do you think that this is more effective than calling people? I know what I think, but I'm gonna let you answer.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. One of the things that I have here that we didn't even get to, right, is utilizing social media, right? Is in a low inventory market. Social media is an incredibly, in any market, social media right now is an incredibly powerful tool, right? There's a tremendous amount of people that social media is becoming the #1 way that they communicate. Even text messaging now sometimes goes unanswered before an Instagram DM or a Facebook message or a YouTube comment, even in some situations. Do I think that it's more effective than calling people? I don't know that that's the right question to ask. So and let me expound on that for just a minute here. I know that we're short on time, so I'll make this quick. Do I think that live and recorded video on Instagram or Facebook is effective at connecting with people? Absolutely, 100%. But that live video is typically going to be one-sided, right? Whereas the purpose of a cold call or a warm call or a phone call or dropping by in somebody's house and knocking on the door, the purpose is to engage in a dialogue. And so I think that the end result, Barry, is going to be different, right? The purpose of those two different medias is different. So I don't think the right question is, do I think it's more effective? I think that the question is, which one should I use in which situation? And I think when you want to engage in dialogue, picking up the phone or dropping by somebody's house, or even sometimes just sending an email with a good hook at the end to get them to respond is sometimes a better tool to use than video on any social media platform. And then there's times where the video makes way more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good support of, it's the thing that agents are excited about when someone says, yeah, they saw my video and asked me to list their home. They make a big deal of it because that doesn't happen normally. Normally what happens is it's a support to the other things that we're doing. Everything should lead to a conversation, and the conversation should lead to an appointment. So all the stuff should get you to talk to them. How can you do that at scale? And I think video and social media is a good point or part of that. Jake, you can just be mad at me. We've got another question. In today's market, what leads would you look for other than geo leads? For sale by owner? Question mark.
For sale by owners are good. As I mentioned earlier, for sale by owners are like expireds, right? Low hanging fruit tends to have more competition. I'm not saying that should discourage you, but you should be aware of that. Be aware that when you call a for sale by owner, you're not the only agent who's calling on that. As long as you understand that and you're aware of that and you're aware of the objections sometimes that are going to come along with that, FSBOs are fantastic, right? When markets are hot and in the summertime, FSBOs increase. If I had to recommend a lead for somebody besides geo leads right now, I would actually probably recommend the for rent by owners. And the for rent by owners are fantastic because these are people that are that have vacant rental properties or soon to be vacant rental properties, and they're out looking for a tenant right now. And right now with equities, the way that many people have equity, they just don't even have an idea what it is. They know it's high, they just don't have an idea what it is. And so sometimes when you call out to those people and say, look, I'm a real estate professional, I'm calling, I don't have a tenant for you, but I want to see if selling that home was actually an option for you as opposed to listing it. If your brokerage does property management use it as a property management lead. And worst case scenario, you get on the phone with that person, and this is somebody who buys and sells more often than just their primary residence, right? That's why they have rental properties. So these people tend to be really great to have in your network. So worst case scenario, you say, no big deal, I can't help you right now, but when I see some great investment opportunities arise, do you mind if I reach out to you and let you know what those are?
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of 3 leads in one, right? The for rent by owners, and it's a great way to go.
Well, and I forget his name, but the last webinar that we did, REDX sponsored, I in my head, I call him Professor Xavier because he reminded me Las Vegas, bald, shaved head, crushing it. Anyway, I don't remember his name, but it's the last webinar we did. That's exactly what he's doing, is what you just said, the for rent by owners. And he's not doing a hard sale. He's just like, hey, equity, home prices are crazy high. If you're still vacant, I'd love to send you a CMA so you can see what your home's worth. Really soft sale, but because of the volume that he's doing, it's just working really well. But we really got to end though.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I was going to expound on that, but
okay. 30 more seconds. Go.
All I was going to say is that the wonderful thing is when it comes to a for rent by owner, it's all dollars and cents. There's no emotion involved, right? When you talk to a for sale by owner, they're like, well, I laid these bricks in the patio with my bare hands. It's my blood, sweat, and tears that went into this, right? So there's a lot of emotion in the transaction. For rent by owners, it's all dollars and cents. If it makes sense on paper, it often means that there's something you can do to help them.
Do you guys sell for rent by owner lists?
We do.
Okay. That's kind of fascinating me because I didn't even know it existed. So I just learned something as well. All right. Well, that was 38 seconds. So we are way over. Tyler, thank you for pouring into LCA. Please, I don't know what the process is, Jake. Let's make sure that he comes back to finish going deep on generating business in a low inventory market. It's definitely a now topic. So we appreciate it, man.
Yep. Thanks, Barry. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
No.